Welcome to another episode of the Get Back Coach, presented by Apollo Media. College football fans, rejoice. Week 0 is among us. We made it. We made it, Jay. And Jay, how are we feeling? How are we feeling today?
Man, I'm just excited that college football is back. We finally have something to look forward to on Saturdays. For me, I have the NASCAR and the UFC scattered in there, but college football is what I live for. And man, 0 week just feels like the light at the end of the tunnel, the long, dark off-season tunnel. And I just can't wait. Can't wait for football to be back on television. Can't wait to see all the chaos and the athleticism and everything else on display. We did it. Yeah. We made it.
I mean, like you said, you have NASCAR. I've been keeping track of the Phillies, and I love baseball. I love the Phillies. You love NASCAR, but there's just something about this stupid sport. There's just it's chaos. It's pageantry. The regionality of it. That we just keep going back for more. The little niche things in this sport is what makes us come crawling back year in and year out. And we're here. We made it. Week 0 is upon us. So today, we're going to review. We're going to review, give some picks. We have 4 games in on week 0. It's just a little appetizer. It's like when you go to the Mexican restaurant and they give you the chips and salsa. This is just to hold you over until the main course comes in week 1. So, Jay, week 0, the premier game at noon Eastern Standard Time. Florida State versus Georgia Tech in Dublin. And first, Jay, yay or nay, fair or foul, should they keep playing the first game in Dublin, yes or no?
Man, so you know how I feel about neutral site games.
Exactly.
I like the Dublin deal, but I think it has to be Notre Dame.
Yeah, exactly.
I think like having an ACC or a Big Ten matchup there with no Notre Dame just kind of doesn't make sense. Even then, like, I'm still not a huge neutral site game person, but like Notre Dame Navy, that's fine. Put it over there. Who cares? Those teams play a lot of neutral site games anyway.
Yeah, I'm not. And like they did it with Notre Dame, and then they did it one year with Penn State and Central Florida. 15, I want to say, was more. It was O'Brien versus O'Leary. However, O'Leary retired. O'Brien took the job at the Texans. So now you're sitting there with a Penn State versus Central Florida game with 0 Irish ties. Like Nebraska Northwestern. What do these teams have to do with Ireland?
Yeah.
Nothing. Absolutely nothing. So they're playing in Aviva Stadium, which is rugby. Right? Are you familiar at all? I know you have rugby ties.
Yeah. It's it is a massive, iconic venue over there across the pond. But this just feels like such a weird matchup to have played there.
And again, of course, it's week 0. So we have to talk about how much we have a disdain for neutral site games. But I don't know. I wish this game was at Georgia Tech, or Florida State. Like this makes no sense to me. Is Notre Dame? That's it. I will say, fans that go out, a hell of a time.
Yeah, gonna have a good time over there, and I would like to go see a college football game. Myself.
It would be cool. It would absolutely be cool. So, let's talk about the matchup here. Georgia Tech, 11-point underdog, over under set at 56.5. Here's the thing with this game: Florida State coming off of a perfect regular season ACC title, taking on the Georgia Tech Yellow Jackets, who are trending up. This is a team, the offense got better, defense got better last year. The offense should be even better. They have a ton of production coming back on offense. Jay, Brent Key is 11-10 as the interim and head coach of Georgia Tech, 11-10. And I think if you're Georgia Tech, you have to be pretty excited because this is the best they've looked in a few years.
Yeah, I mean, obviously the Jeff Neal experience did not go well. That was something that just didn't really pan out. It's like theoretically Georgia Tech should be good. I know they have like some issues with just the academic side of things and how much that can affect a program.
Right.
But it's tough. And I misspoke, by the way. It's Jeff Collins, not Jeff Neal. Jeff Neal's a UFC fighter. So that's where the first slip up already of the year, getting that out of the way. But no, I feel like there was massive steps taken. I think the locker room is way more behind Brent Key. I think you saw that immediately whenever he took over as interim. So I think if you're Georgia Tech, you have to be happy with it. You need to be recruiting better, being in Atlanta, being in a place where there is a rich recruiting ground, rich recruiting history. You have close ties to Florida so that you can get it throughout the Southeast. Like, it's a hub for a reason, right? Like, that's where the SEC championship game is for a reason. And it's because there is a ton of athletes within close proximity to Atlanta that you can recruit. Again, the academic side plays a little bit of it. I mean, for years they were still in Russell, which, if you know anything about apparel, Russell is not the catchiest brand for.
Excuse me, athletes. I wore Russell at Mansfield. Okay, so watch that mud you're slinging at Russell.
I'm not slinging mud at Russell. I'm just saying, it's not like you don't have like the Nike or Adidas. No. Brand name to it for recruitment purposes. No offense to any Russell fans out there. But I do feel like this Georgia Tech team, and I said this in the ACC preview, I think they're going to be a bit of a surprise this year for a lot of people. Unfortunately, they get probably the best team in the conference in week 1.
Yeah.
Or week 0, sorry.
No, but you're exactly right. However, here, Florida State is going to have the Jimmies and Joes, okay? They are going to have more talent probably than Georgia Tech has. However, Florida State has to replace 10 NFL draft picks from last year's team. They lose almost 50% of their entire production from last season. Georgia Tech is returning a lot more. I think this team is going to gel more early on. I think Florida State will find their footing, and I'm not saying Florida State's going to lose this game. Florida State wins this game. However, I like Georgia Tech to keep this close and keep it. I think Georgia Tech's going to cover. So I like Georgia Tech plus 11 in this game, in a closer game than I think people think, just because Georgia Tech, more production coming back. These guys know each other better. And I think they're going to give Florida State fits for a little bit. Florida State wins. Georgia Tech is going to cover plus 11. What are you thinking here with your pick?
Yeah, I'm on Georgia Tech plus 11 as well. I think Florida State's going to be the better team. But there's a lot of factors. First of all, it's the first week of the season, or first game of the season. You're going to have some kinks to work out. You also have the added effect of playing overseas, right? You never know how the team's going to react to that. I think that's something that lends itself to more of a sloppy game that would be closer than perhaps you would normally think. And then, like you said, Georgia Tech just has some more continuity. Mm-hmm. There's more time together in the locker room. These guys are they've spent more time together. And to an extent, I also think that Brent Key has more experience with the guys in the program too. So you have to add all that up, and it makes me feel like Georgia Tech is going to be very competitive in this game. I think 11 is a lot of points for that. With that being said, I do also like the under at 56.5. I just think that it's going to be a low-scoring game. Some of that sloppiness that I mentioned is going to keep this from being – and I think Florida State's defense is what kind of carried them late in the season last year. especially with Jordan Travis gone. I do think they're going to be more of a ball control team with DJU under center, and obviously losing Johnny Wilson at the receiver position. So it's going to be a low scoring game, in my opinion. Georgia Tech keeps it close, covers the plus 11, and we hit the under at 56.5.
Okay, love it. Next game up, a little bit of Mountain West and FCS. So this game is right up Jay's alley.
It's our FCS minute, but we get a full discussion here.
Yeah. Montana State at New Mexico. New Mexico, the FBS team, is a 9-point home underdog, over under set at 53.5. Now, Jay, this is your expertise, so I'm going to let you go first. What are you looking at this?
Yeah, Montana State's going to be a contender for the FCS National Championship this year, and I expect this to be a very good Bobcats team. I'm not just saying that because they won the NJOA poll, and that's where I'm headed come October. This is going to be a very solid squad, and it's a New Mexico team that's going through a full rebuild, right? First year under Bronco Mendenhall. Excited to see what he does in Albuquerque. But this is a tough situation to walk into. I mean, New Mexico just not a program with a lot of historic success, right? This is not an easy place to win. We've seen them have decent years in the past, but like bowl eligibility is a decent year for New Mexico. Like there's a different standard. And I think that's reflected in the line that you see. It's kind of wild to see, right? Like an FCS program favored by 9 points
on the road.
On the road, right? Like it is not something you see every day. This is a tough one, right? Because I think Montana State is definitely going to be a better team. I just think that 9 points is a lot for an FCS program on the road at an FBS destination against a coach that I think we can agree is a very, very good coach in Bronco Mendenhall, who has a history of doing some great things. There's been some turnover within the state. Obviously, New Mexico kind of sees an opportunity to get better with Jerry Kill leaving New Mexico State, having some upheaval there in Las Cruces. So I do think New Mexico is going to be better this year. Better enough? No. With that being said, I think Montana State +9 or Montana State -9 is a little bit much. I kind of like I like the Lobos to cover here. I think Montana State probably still wins this game, but it's going to be a close one.
Yeah. I don't know. I think it's going to be close. I like Montana State. This is probably, again, Jay, you're better with the FCS stuff than I am. However, Montana State, I think, at least from what I've been seeing, might have one of the best offenses in the entire FCS. I do think, especially with their depth on the defensive line, New Mexico has a quarterback, pretty electric guy, Devin Dampier, can scoot a little bit. So this is what I got. I like Montana State to cover the -9. However, if you think that's too much, I love the over 53.5.
Yeah.
I think the over 53.5 is the safer bet there, just because Montana State struggles a little bit on offense, or both these teams really struggle a little bit on offense, and both defenses, both defenses
struggle.
I messed up there. Both defenses struggle. Both offenses should have a successful day.
Yeah.
So with that being said, like the over there. Look at you and I already. Week 0, 2 flubs.
Fine. The other piece of it too is you look at an FCS program, obviously you don't have as many full scholarships as an FBS team does, and that affects the depth. So if Montana State has some key guys, go down, you don't have the scholarships to have as much depth as an FBS program would. In this case, I think Montana State's ones are going to be better. But if you have into rotations, things like that to take into consideration, that's where I think New Mexico can keep this a little bit closer.
Yeah. Next up, SMU at Nevada. This line is absolutely huge. SMU is a 27.5 favorite. Over under set at 56.5. Here's the thing. SMU is going to win this game. SMU is going to win this game by a lot. Nevada, this is probably one of the programs that is struggling the most in the FBS right now. Nevada, and it's crazy because Nevada had a lot of years in the 2000s where they were pretty good.
Well, and when Jay Norvell was there,
they
looked like they were kind of trending up as well.
Yeah, and then he leaves, and now it's like they just fell flat on their face again. So here's the thing. SMU is not a juggernaut on defense by any stretch. However, I think Nevada, this is going to sound crazy for the people who've been following Group of Five for a while. I think Nevada's offense is going to be bad again. Like, I think it's going to be very bad. I think their defense, though, is what might trend up a little bit. But SMU, it's not a big enough tick up that SMU is going to struggle on offense. I think SMU runs away with this game. 27, though, is way too much for me to feel comfortable. So I'm staying away from that. And on top of it, Jay, 56.5. I am so afraid because Nevada's defense being bad. I'm so afraid of 41-7.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
With their offense just not being able to score.
You're right. And so this is the game. I'm staying away from it, but SMU is going to win this game handedly.
Yeah, I look at this and I understand staying away from it, but I am taking SMU to cover. I think SMU is going to be out for blood after feeling like they got robbed last season, with the things that happened. One thing that gives me a bit of pause is they're going up to Reno.
Mm-hmm.
So that could be an interesting environment, obviously there. New Coach Choate from he was at Texas last year, I believe. It's an interesting one, right? And I just think SMU has so much to prove. First year in a Power 5 conference, they kind of want to go out and prove that they're here to play immediately. And I think this game gives them an opportunity. You said like a 41-7. I think that's a reasonable score, and that would be enough. That would be enough to cover. I think they win by 4 touchdowns, is ultimately what I'm looking at. And, you look at like a 38-10 type game. Mm-hmm. I think that's very well within reason to get you to that 28 points that you need to cover, 27.5. So I like SMU to cover. Don't like the over, again, for the reasons that you said. Yeah. Nevada offensively is just not going to be good. Mm-hmm. And I don't think there's going to be enough points scored, but I don't want to take that chance just in case, because SMU has shown a leaky defense at times for sure.
Oh yeah, absolutely. This one shouldn't be close. Reno, like you said, man, 4 touchdowns. That's a lot.
Yeah,
that is a lot. And I think another SMU super vanilla. They're not going to show anything. They don't want to show anything on film, I think. So like when you start getting in the third quarter and you can put up another one, I don't think they're really going deep into the playbook. I think they're going to be pretty standard, pretty vanilla, and not show a whole lot because they don't want to show stuff on film. But yeah, SMU Mustangs get a big win. Yeah,
I like it. I just, I don't think this game's going to tell us much about SMU either. I think we're going to have to wait to really see what the Mustangs have until later in the season.
No. I do think maybe a little in the first, but like you said, they ain't going to show that they're going to run away with this, and they probably know they can. Last game of week 0, definitely our friends at the Sicko at the Sickos committee definitely are eyeing up this one. The Delaware State Hornets, I want to say.
Yep.
The Delaware State Hornets. I should have knew that. But anyway, Delaware State Hornets are going to Hawaii to take on the Rainbow Warriors. I have seen no lines here. I have seen no over-unders. It is
So
not.
I pulled it up because I
You
saw
got
that in
something?
the notes. Yeah.
Okay.
The over is at 55.5.
Okay.
The spread is Hawaii plus 38. No money line though.
Yeah. You don't say.
Just to give you like a little bit of backstory, Delaware State was 0-5 in conference, 1-10 overall. They did get one win over Virginia
Lynchburg. The Vulcans.
which is currently D2. They have a loss to D2 Bowie State.
The Bowie State, though, aren't they like, again, it's still Division II, but like, isn't Bowie State like super good?
I don't
You
know,
don't know?
to be honest.
I'm almost positive Bowie State's like a really good Division II team.
Well, we can try to find out what their record was, but Delaware State is not one of those powerhouse FCS programs that gives the teams worries whenever they play an FBS squad.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, a struggle for this team last year, so I would expect Hawaii to do well, but it feels wrong to bet anything on this game, to be honest.
Nothing.
So there's a reason there's no money line.
Bowie State last year went 6-4, so not like great. Solid. They were a solid Division II team. I want to say they were huge, but I want to say they were huge in like the 90s for like Division II. But here's the thing. I don't know anything about Delaware State besides the fact that this is one of probably the worst FCS teams that we're going to see. And here's the thing with Hawaii. Timmy Chang, they didn't go to a bowl game last year, but Timmy Chang has this team playing a lot better than they were the year prior. Listen, they're going to throw the football. And I think Hawaii, at least what we can expect from them this year, is to compete for that bowl game. And they have a shot to possibly get it. I think the secondary is going to be way better than last year. They really had some strides towards the end of the year. And I think the offense is going to get even better. So Hawaii, it's not going back to the Colt Brennan years. It's not going back to any of that. But I think Hawaii is going to be a little bit better. And this is a team that I would not be surprised if they go bowling. So I think that's what you can expect from your super late night sicko party when you're watching this one at midnight.
Yeah, there's not much else to be said about this game. I echo everything you say about the offense. They should take a step forward. Defense is probably still going to be a struggle. Like you said, they closed out pretty strong last year. I mean, they beat that Air Force team that everyone was so high on. Obviously, Air Force had a ton of injuries,
right?
Which played a role in that. But they closed out with a win against Colorado State. They beat Nevada, who we just talked about. So they went 3-2 in their final few games, and their losses were to a San Jose State team that kind of came on strong towards the end of the year, and a Wyoming team that's always tough, especially when you play at elevation, 72-20 and all that. Coming from sea level, probably not easy.
No, absolutely not. Absolutely not. But yeah, so there is your week 0 preview. Jay, before we get into week 1, okay, because I know when we talk week 1, we have all these things to we have all these games to talk about, but we did release a blog that talked about the college football road trip, okay, and we all know the big games, okay. We know about the Ohio State at Oregon. We know about Bama or Georgia going to Alabama. But what's a game that for this year that maybe not enough people are talking about being a high-profile game that should be?
There's a few choices here. I mean, I'm going back to the FCS, and obviously I'm biased because of Send Jay away, and that game is going to be one that I'm at. But the meeting between Idaho and Montana State is going to be an absolute classic. Mm-hmm. Two Big Sky teams that are going to be competing for postseason opportunity. I think that's going to be a really good game. Looking at in the state of Texas, UTSA and Texas State. I think it's a bit of an underrated rivalry just because the state of Texas has so many historic matchups, and this is a bit of a newer one, but like 30 minutes separate those two schools, and there's some history with GJ Kinney having played for Jeff Traylor in the Texas high school football ranks back in the day, and obviously there's some bonds there. I think that's going to be a fantastic one. You look at like App State Liberty, like that's going to be a very good group of five matchup. I have Iowa State and Utah in the back half of the season in the Big 12 as a really fun matchup. It's going to be two very physical teams, and again, the Big 12 is a league of parity, so who knows what that situation is going to look like going into that game.
Yeah. So absolutely everything you just said, all fantastic games. Some of them I had in mind. I wasn't actually thinking Liberty App State, although that is a huge one, especially for playoff implications. James Madison at App State, I think, is going to be a huge game for the Sun Belt. Thinking about, obviously I'm biased with Penn State, West Virginia in the beginning of the year in week 1. How about Utah at Oklahoma State? I think that's like, we're not it's a game that we usually don't see, two teams that, Big 12, old Pac-12 / Mountain West team. I think that's going to be a really good one. But no, there's a ton of, great games out there. I had another one in mind, and
UNLV and Kansas play in week 3. And I think that's a really fun matchup that could fly under the radar a little bit.
Yeah. Oh, I remembered it. I feel like no one's talking about the Cyhawk Trophy in the beginning of the year.
El Assico?
Yeah. Like Iowa State and Iowa, I think that game, like I was big on Iowa in the beginning of the year, and I still am. However, we did that Big 12 deep dive. Iowa State got some people coming back, man.
Yeah.
And I think this is going to be one of the better Cyhawk games we're going to see. Again, I'm still high on Iowa. I'm still picking Iowa to win. However, Cyclones are going to be ready. So I feel like that rivalry doesn't get enough love.
Yeah, another rivalry that we haven't talked about. Obviously, we've talked about a lot of the rivalries that we're losing because of realignment, and a big one that we're getting back this year is Texas and Texas A&M. But another rivalry in the SEC that returns that I think people haven't talked about much, and perhaps because this rivalry can come across as one-sided, especially to an outsider. OU and Missouri, because Missouri fans do not like OU. There is some history there, and OU, I think it's probably pretty similar to how you think about Penn State and Pitt. With it's more of a one-sided rivalry. One team really hates the other, but people in Columbia are fired up for that matchup to be back. I mean, it goes back to the Big 8 days. Like there is a lot of history between these two programs, and you can bet Mizzou will have that one circled on their calendar.
See, like I would think I thought Texas and Mizzou were more, they would hate each other more.
No, it's Mizzou. It's Mizzou and OU.
Well,
I can't remember what they called that game, but it may be one of those trophies that is no longer used for reasons. But yeah, Mizzou and Oklahoma, there's definitely some history there. And like I said, I mean, it goes all the way back to the Big 8 days.
Right. Well, listen, there is a ton of really good football out there. And I know that it's easy to follow the high profile games. It's easy to, because they're always being promoted. The night games, the prime times, the Ohio States, the Alabamas, the Georgias, Oregon. But there's other really good college football out there with little niches and traditions, and expand your horizons. However, if you're listening to this podcast, you probably already have your horizons expanded, but look even further.
Yeah.
Look even further.
Look, I mean, you can get into, we haven't touched on these games, but there's some other FCS matchups in week 0 too.
Oh,
FCS versus FCS, McNeese State and Tarleton State.
Oh, okay.
You got North Alabama and SEMO That's Southeast Missouri State.
Yep.
And then you got Florida A&M and Norfolk State, which is SWAC versus MEAC kickoff game. So plenty of college football to watch. And like those games are all televised. McNeese and Tarleton is going to be on ESPN2.
That's a good one, by the way. Hang on. Well, no.
McNeese has struggled a lot. I think their 1-1 last year was a forfeit because of the sad situation that happened with Northwestern State.
Absolutely.
But Tarleton is going to be one to watch this year. That's a team that I'm interested to see because they've invested a lot into that program out in Stephenville, and I think that's going to be an interesting one to watch. Southeast Missouri State is usually a pretty solid FCS program.
Always.
So that'll be a fun one in Alabama. And then who doesn't love a good HBCU matchup, right? Like the bands, all the history there. Those are always fun too. So tuning into Florida A&M and Norfolk State will be a fun one as well.
Great. All right. Well, shorter episode than usual. However, only not a whole lot to talk about or lots to talk about, but not a lot of picks.
Yeah.
Not a whole lot of picks this week. Next week, full-fledged episode, all talking about week 1. So make sure you guys tune in. But Jay, anything to leave the wonderful people with?
I mean, it's like we said, there's plenty of football to watch. Obviously, it's not a full slate of games, but don't turn your nose up at some of those FCS offerings. Like we said, there's going to be some fun stuff out there. Really excited to see Florida State and Georgia Tech take the field. I think Georgia Tech is kind of surprising people with how close they keep it. But yeah, stay tuned in. If you're interested in sponsoring the show, reach out to us. We're planning to do even more content than we've done in previous seasons. So there's a lot of opportunity there. And if you're listening at home or at work, just trying to, keep that undercover while the boss is watching, make sure to like and subscribe. Leave us a 5-star review, all the things that help us grow as a podcast.
Beautifully said, Jay. From all of us here at the Get Back Coach, have a great week and enjoy week 0 college football.